So the Fuhrer-in-Chief, Donald, is claiming that Ukraine has got $350 billion from America. $350 billion. My God, that's like a third. That's like a third of the military-industrial complex. $350 billion. It's actually $100 billion. It's actually less than $100 billion. So he is a liar. He is lying, just like when he said that we were given $100 million worth of condoms to Palestine. He's a fucking liar. He lied 30,000 times in the first administration. He can't speak without lying. He never has said a damn truth whatsoever. Truth Social. This is the guy running Truth Social. We are in the post-truth era. The post-truth era. And so I'm going to read some numbers here, and these are the troop levels of a bunch of different countries. And I'm going to analyze how many troops does Ukraine have, France, Germany, Russia, America, China, and then I'm only taking into consideration of the number of troops. So I'm not thinking about the strategy or tactics or the equipment, only the number of troops. So this is, just one aspect of war, but let's see in terms of the number of troops, who's got more troops than others. Can Europe defend Europe? Can Europe defend Ukraine? Can Europe fend off Russia? And if Russia and China got together, could they fend off Russia and China? Could America fend off Russia? If it was the United States versus Russia, who do you think has more troops? So let me start reading off these numbers. Estonia has 7,000 troops. The UK has 138,000 troops. Romania, 126,000 troops. Greece has 147,000 souls in their military. Spain has 199,000 human beings in their military. Poland has 216,000 troops. Turkey has 481,000 plus 400,000 in reserves for a total of 881,000. Lithuania has 22,000. Italy has 165,000 troops and 170,000 in reserves. The Carabinieri, something. For a combined total of 240,000 troops. That's Italy. That's Georgia Maloney. Norway has 24,000 troops. Finland has 24,000 troops. Germany has 185,000 troops. Plus 151,000 in reserves for a total of 330,000. France has 204,000 troops. 204,700 with 100,000 in reserves for a total of 305,000 troops. And the Ukraine has 980,000 troops that are active and 1.2 million troops in reserves. So in all of Europe, the Ukraine actually is the biggest military. The biggest military in all of Europe is the Ukraine. 2 million troops. That's more than Russia. That's more than America. And it's the same amount as China. And so let's just take one hypothetical. If you were to take all those countries that I mentioned, which is not all of the countries in Europe, so you could actually presume that there's more troops in Europe. But if you add all those numbers that I just added up for all those European countries, you would get 4.7 million troops. And if you add up Russia, US, and China, you would also get 4.7 million troops. So in some respects, Europe versus Russia, America, and China, if there was that three triumvirate, that would be equal. That would be an equal war. Ukraine has enough troops to fight off Russia by themselves. 2 million versus 1.5 million. You know what protects Ukraine? They want a security backstop, right? so we could allow them to become part of NATO. Why not just give them a nuke? If you get them a couple nukes, that would protect their country. They gave up their nukes thinking that America would back them, but that just shows you why we have the Second Amendment. Yeah, Mao took the guns, Hitler took the guns, Stalin took the guns. They took the guns away from Ukraine, and now Ukraine is sitting there like a sitting duck. If you're to take all the numbers of Europe combined, you get 4.7 million. Russia has 1.5 million troops. So if you're to take Europe's 4.7 million troops versus Russia 1.5 million troops, well, Europe wins, because Europe would be 3 times bigger than Russia. Europe has 3 times the amount of troops that Russia has. Now, even if you were to take all those troops, 4.7 million troops of Europe, and you had to fight against Russia and China, well, that's 4.7 million versus 3.5 million. Europe is 1.2 million troops bigger than Russia and China combined. So, theoretically, Europe can defend Europe. Europe can defend Ukraine. NATO doesn't need America. Since we're switching sides, right? Just like in 1984, we've always been at war with Eurasia. We've always been at war with East Asia. No, we've never been at war with East Asia. We've always been at war with Eurasia, right? Oceania, ignorance is strength. Slavery is freedom. Now let's do a couple more hypotheticals. If America was on the side of Russia and China, that's 4.7, 4.8 million. That's equal to Europe. So that's an equal fight. We don't know how that would turn out. If America was allied with Russia and China, because a lot of people are saying that what Donald is trying to do is that he's trying to split the Russian and Chinese alliance. Didn't Putin come out of the communist? But then Russia is very capitalistic. China is still communist. And their communist nation is fucking kicking ass. If you checked out the Red Note Rebellion, they got bullet trains, they got smart bullet trains, they got smart airplanes, they got smart cars, they even have smart architecture. China looks like the future. China looks like how America should look and is supposed to look like. But what was it, Norway? They said that our infrastructure is underdeveloped. We don't have a healthcare infrastructure. We don't have social services infrastructure. Now let's just presume America actually sides with the free world. If America takes her rightful place as the leader of the free world, if we're on the side of Europe, so we would add our 1.32 million troops on 4.7 troops of Europe. That's 6 million troops. Versus China and Russia's 3.5 million. So we would have 2 times the amount. The free world wins. If Russia and China were to ally together and go to war with Europe and America, we got double the amount of troops, 6 million versus 3.5 million. If it was America versus Russia, we actually got 200,000 less troops than Russia. So that means America would lose against Russia. Just looking at the numbers, strictly by troop levels. Russia has 1.5 million troops. America's got 1.32 million troops. So America couldn't even defeat Russia. If America helps Ukraine capitulate, well then hell, Russia pretty much runs the free world. They're the leader of the free world and they ain't free at all. He's a dictator. He's against the three branches. He's against Constitution. He's against enumerated powers. No rule of law. He kills his political opponents. He poisons them. R.I.P. Alexei Navalny. And a whole bunch of people, right? How many people has he killed? Like a whole bunch. He's been in power since 1999 with that terrorist genocide in the Caucasus Mountains. So America would lose against Russia. Not only could Russia just run over Estonia and Lithuania and then on to Germany and France and the United Kingdom, and then once Russia takes over Europe, takes their economy and buildings and weapons and troops, Russia's in a position, they got more troops than America. So just judging strictly by troop levels, America loses to Russia. America cannot defeat Russia. And of course, if you had America versus China and Russia by ourselves, well, that's not even a close fight. If Europe doesn't ally with us, then we would just have our 1.3 million troops versus China and Russia's 3.5 million troops. So China and Russia together, that's like 2.5, almost 3 times, we'll just say 2.5 times bigger than America. So China and Russia has more troops, 2.5 times more troops than America. So America couldn't take on China by ourselves. We couldn't take on Russia by ourselves. And we certainly couldn't take on China and Russia combined by ourselves. So if Europe is up against Russia and China, that would be 4.7 versus 3.5. Europe has more troops than Russia and China. Our 1.3 million, I won't say tip the scales. If America was on the side of Russia and China, then we would be equally matched with Europe. But if America was on the side of Europe, that tips the scales onto the side of the free world. So that's just looking at the numbers. Just looking at the numbers at the troop level. So let's just review our conclusions. Europe versus Russia. Europe is 3 times bigger than Russia. Europe can defend themselves. Europe can defend Ukraine. Europe can defeat Russia. If Europe need to go up against Russia and China, Europe could defeat both Russia and China. Europe has 4.7 million. Russia and China's got 3.5 million. So Europe is 1.2 million troops bigger than Russia and China. And so if America was on Europe's side, Europe could defeat Russia and China by themselves with the troop level if we had our 1.32 million. Then the odds would even be more in our favor. But if America sides with Russia and China, that equals the amount of troops of Europe. What was it? Sun Tzu says if you're up in a fight and you're equal or bigger, then fight. But if you're weaker, then run. So if America had to confront Russia, well, we're weaker. So we would have to run with Russia in hopes we could build ourselves up and become stronger so we could fight another day. If America was up against China, we would have to run because that is not equal. If America allied ourselves with the free world, with Europe, then we would be stronger than both Russia and China combined. So strictly by the numbers, we should be on the side of our allies. We should be on the side of Western civilization. Europe did all the things that we were doing with the Constitution, election, Bill of Rights. And Russia's just a fucking dictator. It's a new age king. It's just fascism. And just like when Hitler took over the Sudetenlands, he says, well, hell, there's a whole bunch of German speakers in the Sudetenlands. And then after World War II, all those Germans in Bohemia got killed. Because you had so many German speakers in Bohemia, then that gave Hitler a pretense to say, well, hell, I could just invade your country. That's what he's doing in the Donetsk region right now. He's saying, well, there's a bunch of Russian speakers over there. He's also kidnapped 20,000 kids, changed their name, forcing them to speak Russian, indoctrinating them. Where are those 20,000 kids at? So this is some fucked up times that we're in. Some fucked up times. We're going to ally ourselves with a fucking terrorist dictator, a totalitarian fascist. Why? Because our president is essentially totalitarian fascist. And when it comes to the things I like about America, well, there's 8 powers that the Constitution says that we have. We're going to stop King George III, right? Our American Revolution. We fought for freedom and democracy. We fought for our independence. We got our independence through our Revolutionary War. Then we got ourselves a Constitution. We got ourselves a Bill of Rights. Now, the Bill of Rights is perfect. The Bill of Rights is perfect. A lot of the states have a right to revolution. I read this one. Colorado has a right to revolution as long as it's not repugnant to the Constitution. So here's 8 virtues of America, of American constitutionalism. Because strong Americans can defeat fascism. Abraham Lincoln said that if we want our political institutions to be perpetual, then that means we would celebrate the laws of our country. Elections, federalism, bicameralism, Bill of Rights, constitutionalism, rule of law, enumerated powers, and the 3 branches of government. 3 branches of government, so that way we don't just have one tyrant. You got one who's writing the laws, one executing the laws, and another judging the laws. The enumerated powers, you only have the powers that are listed out for you in the Constitution. There's no reason why Donald should be allowed to be passing money out for all these wars, bombing Somalia, bombing anybody without a declaration of war from Congress. Congress needs to take their powers back. They got that whole laundry list of chores. The rule of law. Nobody's above the rule of law. The law punishes and protects everybody equally. Nobody can rape, murder, assault, steal, arson. Nobody can commit arson. But also, nobody's freedoms can be taken away. We got the Bill of Rights. We got constitutionalism. Constitution is a contract between the people and the government. Bicameralism is we got 2 houses in Congress. So not only have we divided government up into 3 branches, but the legislative branch is divided into 2. You got the executive, legislative, and the judicial. And the legislative branch has the House of Representatives and the Senate. And you got federalism. So you have one leader of the 50 states, and then you got 50 states, and they all have their own powers within their states. In fact, the way it looks like to me, you know, America provides for the common defense, so the military, and ultimately, if we're not being attacked, I'm not sure why we have standing armies anyways. We keep meddling in everybody else's affairs. 9/11 was blowback because we gave bin Laden all that money and power and weapons. But the states look like they have about 90% of the power. The states have their own National Guard, their own police force. They spend the money. They make their own laws, their own schools, hospitals, the works. So the governors have more power within their own state than the damn president does. And elections. And so what does that mean? That means the way we stand up to the tyranny of this totalitarian fascist wannabe is there's going to be elections. In 2 years, you're going to have the midterm elections. In 4 years, you're going to have a presidential election. Federalism, you got 50 governors. 50 governors don't have to kiss the ass of the damn president. When it came to the Civil War, it mattered who the governors were. It mattered who the governors were. Bicameralism, you got 2 houses, you got 3 branches of government. You're dividing these branches so that way there isn't just a tyrant. So the legislative branch needs to be strong as possible. They should learn from South Korea. When the president declared martial law, they broke into their own parliament, into their own Congress, and they voted the martial law down, and then the troops had to disband. The troops are actually trying to keep the legislative branch from convening. But the legislative branch, unlike the Democrats allowed one guy, random ass fucking guy, standing in front of the Department of Education to stop them. Hey, we're going to go take our Department of Education back. Wait a second. There's a random ass guy standing in front of the door. Well, shit. I guess we better go home. What leverage do we have, says Hakeem Jeffries. The Bill of Rights says that we as individual Americans have freedoms. So if someone says, hey, you can't peacefully assemble. Hey, you can't protest. You're not allowed to march. You're not allowed to bear arms. You're not allowed to speak. You're not allowed to use the press. You're not allowed to do religion. You're not allowed to stop troops from quartering in your house. You don't have the 4th or the 5th or the 6th or the 7th or the 8th or the 9th or the 10th Amendment. That's bullshit. Every individual American has individual rights, and they're guaranteed by the Constitution, which means they're lawful, legitimate, constitutional. They come from, nature. So they're common sense. Your own rationality can figure out that you have a right to speak. You have a right to speak up. You have a right to defend yourself. You have a right to say things. You have a right to petition. 4th Amendment, no unreasonable search or seizures. 5th Amendment, the right to a grand jury indictment, the right to remain silent. The 6th Amendment, the 7th and the 8th. The 7th Amendment says anything over $20, you get a jury trial. 8th Amendment says no excessive fines or bail and no cruel or unusual punishment. The 9th Amendment, and then the 10th Amendment. The 9th Amendment says that even though we listed these rights in the Bill of Rights, there's still other rights that are out there that we didn't list. So it's not finite. It's not just these rights and that's it. We have more rights from nature. And then the 10th Amendment says all the powers that the U.S. government doesn't have goes to the states and goes to the people. We always have a right to defend ourselves, and revolution is just the self-defense principle of a nation. When dictatorship becomes fact, when totalitarian fascism becomes fact, revolution becomes a duty. The measure of a man or woman, the measure of a person, the measure of a human is to stand up against fascism. Some bully wants to take your lunch money. You have your own lunch money. Why don't you just be happy with eating your own lunch? This is my lunch money, and I'm going to eat my own lunch with my lunch money. To stand up against a bully to keep your own fucking lunch money, your own families, your own communities, your own households, your own careers, your own countries, your own nations. That's the measure of your womanhood. That's the measure of your manhood. That's the measure of your personhood. MLK says if you're not willing to die for anything, then you're not fit to live. You're not even fit to live. And I'm willing to die for American constitutionalism, which I'm calling to be a strong American. Anything a fascist can do, strong Americans can do bigger and better. Oh, they believe in action, right? Fascists are all about action, action, action. You're trying to tell me a strong American can't be for action? Of course we can. Of course we can. Enumerated powers, the president only has so many powers he's allowed to use. Which of these powers are outside the jurisdiction of the enumerated powers? That's Maryland v. McCulloch. and the three branches of government. So because of those 8 principles, when they take away our 3 branches of government, our enumerated powers, the rule of law, constitutionalism, Bill of Rights, bicameralism, federalism, and elections, then we have to have a revolution. They've taken everything away from us. There's nothing American constitutional anymore. The Constitution is just a scrap of piece of parchment that don't mean jack shit. And yeah, the courts can interpret the damn piece of paper, but we could read the piece of paper too and say, this is what the Constitution means to me. What does it mean for you? Abraham Lincoln says if you're a good mother, then you're going to be teaching, or a good father, you're going to teach your children about the Constitution, and you're going to have them fall in love with the laws. You're going to create this political religion, and that's what's going to maintain our political institutions. You like this country? You like our freedoms? Then we should maintain our political institutions. So those are 8 brilliant legal tools embedded in the U.S. Constitution that fight against totalitarian tyranny. America should be sitting at the top of the free world. We should be leading the free world. We shouldn't be allying ourselves with a bunch of fucking terrorist dictators who don't give a fuck about elections or 3 branches or Constitution or Bill of Rights. What the fuck are we doing? Hitler kind of turned his back, right? He signed that agreement with the Soviet Union and then fucking switched up, right? How'd that turn out for him? He was going to be friends with the Soviet Union, the non-aggression pact, and then he turned right back around and stabbed his fucking ally in the back. That was pretty dumb of him, wasn't it? Europe has enough troops to defend themselves. Europe has enough troops to defend Ukraine. Since Ukraine's got the biggest army, Europe should just stand up for themselves and maybe even allow Ukraine to be the leader of the free world now. Because the people of Ukraine, they got courage. I heard even Crystal Ball said that if America was invaded, she's running. She's out of here. So I wonder how many other crystal balls there are. This country which has been so good to so many Americans, she's like, nah, I'm out of here. See you later. That's no good. So, to the one viewer who just came in, the conclusion is yes, Europe has enough troops to defend itself, to defend Ukraine, and fight against Russia. Russia has 1.5 million troops, and Ukraine has 2 million troops, and all of Europe has 4.7 million. 4.7 million is bigger than 1.5 million. So since Europe has 4.7 million, that means Europe is 3 times bigger than Russia. Europe is 3 times bigger than Russia. Europe could defend themselves. Europe could defend Ukraine. Europe could fight against Russia without America. And that sucks. So even though this is all shocking to everybody right now, it's a shock doctrine. This is going to force Europe to build up their defenses and their military. And we're trying to break this alliance between Russia and China. And then what happens when that alliance doesn't break? And then Canada and Mexico and Europe become stronger without us. Are we trying to tank the dollar? Do you think shock doctrine is going to work? If our economy is going to scream because they're selling off all the exports, privatizing everything that can be privatized and just keeping the basic government services that corporations need, cops, courts, roads, that means a lot of Americans are going to be hurting. They're trying to get rid of Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. Some crazy times we're in right now. Some crazy times.